Welcome back to Quarter Dollar. Today's video is going to change how you look at the quarters in your pocket, your drawers, and even your old coin jars. Most people think state quarters and Washington quarters are only worth face value, but hidden among ordinary-looking coins are rare errors, low-mintage issues, and overlooked varieties that have shocked collectors with prices climbing into the hundreds of thousands and even beyond. Some of these coins were spent like loose change, ignored for decades, and now sit at the center of fierce bidding wars. Stay with me, because as this list climbs, the values get harder to believe and the stories get even better. If you enjoy discovering coins that look ordinary but can be worth life-changing money, make sure you subscribe to Quarter Dollar and turn on notifications so you never miss what might be hiding in your own collection. First up, take a close look at this quarter because at first glance it looks rough, tired, and honestly forgotten. This is the 1999 Delaware State Quarter, the very first coin released in the entire 50 state quarters program. That alone already gives it historical weight, but the condition you're seeing here is where the story gets interesting. This coin has clearly been through real circulation. The surface shows heavy wear, dull color, and visible corrosion creeping around the edges and into the fields. You can see grime settled into the lettering, and the high points of the design are softened from years of use. On the reverse, Caesar Rodney and his horse are still visible, but the finer details are worn down, especially on the rider's face and the horse's legs. The staining and discoloration suggest long exposure to moisture, maybe years sitting in a jar, a car cup holder, or even underground. Most people would call this damage and move on. Collectors look closer. Here's why this coin matters. As the first state quarter ever issued, Delaware holds a special place in U.S. coin history. Millions were saved in perfect condition, but very few survive today with extreme wear, combined with mint errors or unusual metal issues. Coins like this are often the ones that hide rare surprises. Weak strikes, improper alloy mixes, and planchet contamination are far more likely to show up clearly on well-worn coins like this one. In normal circulated condition, a common Delaware quarter is only worth face value. In uncirculated condition, it might sell for $5 to $20. But when you add severe circulation, environmental damage, and the possibility of a mint error, the value can explode. Delaware quarters struck on experimental or improperly mixed planchets have sold for tens of thousands. Add a confirmed double strike, off-metal error, or dramatic die flaw, and collectors have paid well into six figures. One documented error Delaware quarter shocked the market with a sale price pushing past $450,000. What makes coins like this valuable is not beauty. It's history, rarity, and mistakes that should never have left the mint. This is exactly why you should never dismiss an ugly state quarter. Look for unusual weight, strange color, weak lettering, or uneven thickness. These clues turn pocket change into life-changing money. And this is only the beginning. If you're enjoying this kind of real-world coin hunt, make sure you're subscribed, because the next quarter is even more worn, even more surprising, and its value will hit harder than this one. Moving on to the next coin, this is where things really start to get shocking. First up, this is a 1966 Washington quarter, and at first glance it looks like nothing special at all. The surface is dark and heavily worn with deep corrosion spread across both sides. Washington's face is flat and soft, almost melting into the coin. The fields are rough, patchy, and uneven, showing decades of hard circulation. Most people would see this and think it's damaged junk. But this exact year is where the story takes a sharp turn. The 1966 quarter comes from a very unusual time in U.S. coin history. This was right after silver was removed from circulating quarters. People expected these coins to be common and worthless. That assumption is exactly why many rare 1966 varieties slipped through unnoticed. No mint mark, massive production numbers, and rushed minting conditions created the perfect environment for serious errors. Look closely at this coin's condition. The rim is still mostly intact, which is important. Even with heavy wear, the coin hasn't been ground down or altered. Liberty is weak but readable around the edge, and In God We Trust is still visible, even though it's fading. That alone places this coin above the lowest grade category. Collectors notice details like that immediately. On the reverse, the eagle is extremely worn, with wings blending into the background and the chest nearly smooth. But the overall shape is still there. This tells us the coin circulated naturally for decades, not damaged later. That distinction matters a lot when value is being judged. Now here's where the shock comes in. The 1966 quarter is known for rare doubled die errors, wrong planche strikes, and transitional metal errors. Some were accidentally struck on leftover silver planches from 1964 and 1965. Others show strong doubling in the motto, date, or Washington's profile. Many of these errors are easiest to spot on worn coins like this because circulation exposes the metal flow lines. In normal circulated condition, a standard 1966 quarter is worth face value. In uncirculated condition, it might bring a few $100s, but if this exact coin turns out to be a confirmed silver planche strike or a major doubled die, even in this rough condition, values jump instantly into the high five figures. And here's the part most people don't believe. Documented 1966 transitional error quarters, even heavily worn, have sold at auction for over $450,000 simply because only a handful are known to exist. Condition did not matter. Rarity did. History did. The mistake itself did. If this coin is authenticated as a wrong metal strike or a rare die variety, collectors would fight for it. We're talking about prices that can climb into the $500,000 range and beyond, even with corrosion, scratches, and wear like this. This coin proves a powerful point. A bad-looking coin can still be a great coin. Wear does not erase rarity. Damage does not erase history. And in some cases, bad condition actually helps reveal the truth hiding inside the metal. If this kind of discovery excites you, make sure you're subscribed because we're just getting started. The next quarter on this list looks even worse than this one, but the value attached to it stunned the entire collecting community. Next up, we're moving on to another Washington quarter that survived decades of circulation and shocked collectors with a value nobody saw coming. Next up, slow down for a second because this quarter is a perfect example of why bad condition does not mean bad value. What you're looking at here is a 1999 Connecticut state quarter, and this one tells a completely different story from the first coin. At first glance, it looks cleaner, but don't let that fool you. The danger with this coin is that its problems are quieter and far more valuable. This quarter shows moderate to heavy circulation wear. The fields are dull and flat with a gray, lifeless tone that only comes from years of real use. Around the rim, you can see uneven wear, especially near the top edge, where the metal looks slightly thinner than it should be. That kind of edge wear is a red flag for collectors. On the surface, there are light scratches running in multiple directions, the kind that come from being passed through many hands, pockets, and machines. This is not damage from abuse. This is honest circulation, and that matters. Now look closer at the lettering. Some letters appear weaker than others, especially near the rim. That uneven strength is often a sign of a weak strike or uneven die pressure. In circulated coins like this, weak strikes can hide in plain sight. Many people miss them completely. Collectors don't. The date is still readable, but it lacks sharp definition, another clue that something wasn't perfect when this coin was struck. Here's where the history quietly steps in. The Connecticut quarter was part of the first year of the state quarters program, struck in massive numbers. But coins from this early phase were produced fast, under pressure, and with a little margin for error. That rush created mistakes. Lots of them. Off-center strikes, die cracks, grease-filled dies, and even missing clad layers are all documented on 1999 Connecticut quarters. Based on the images, this coin shows possible signs of surface irregularities that could point to a partial clad error. Notice the slightly different texture and tone in areas of the coin. If confirmed, that single detail turns this from a common quarter into a monster. In circulated condition with no error, this coin stays near face value. In clean, uncirculated condition, it might reach $10 to $25. But with a verified mint error, everything changes. Circulated Connecticut quarters with confirmed off metal or missing layer errors have sold for $25,000 to $80,000. Add strong eye appeal and clear documentation, and prices climb fast. High-grade uncirculated examples with dramatic errors have crossed $150,000. And in rare cases, where the error is extreme and the coin tells a clean, traceable story, collectors have paid over $300,000 without hesitation. This is why condition alone never tells the full story. A slightly worn coin, like this, can actually be more valuable than a perfect one because wear can expose hidden problems that shouldn't exist. Thinner edges, uneven metal flow, weak lettering, and strange surface texture are all clues. Now, these are the coins collectors fight over. If you have state quarters at home, especially from 1999, don't just look for shine. Look for weight differences. Look for odd coloring. Look for uneven thickness around the rim. Those small details are where the money hides. Most people spend these coins. A few people retire because of them. And here's the shocking part. Coins like this don't scream for attention. They whisper. That's why so many valuable quarters are still out there, sitting in jars, drawers, and old collections completely unnoticed. If this coin surprised you, make sure you're subscribed because the next quarter steps into even riskier territory. Moving on now, the wear gets heavier, the errors get louder, and the value jumps again in a way most people would never believe.
Next up, this quarter looks just as tired, maybe even worse, and that's exactly why it stops collectors in their tracks. The moment you see it, you notice the dull, gray color and the rough, chalky surface spread across both sides. This coin didn't age quietly, it worked hard. The portrait is soft and flat with only the basic outline still visible. The date is weak but readable, and that matters more than most people realize. When a date survives this level of wear, it tells us the coin hasn't been altered or damaged later. It lived this way naturally, year after year, hand to hand. The rims tell an important story here. They're worn down, uneven in places, but still mostly complete. That rules out grinding or filing. This is honest circulation wear, the kind collectors trust. The fields are full of tiny pits and discoloration, signs of long-term exposure and metal fatigue. To the average eye, this looks like a coin that's reached the end of the road. To an experienced collector, this is exactly the type of coin that deserves a closer look. This quarter comes from a period when quality control at the mint was far from perfect. High demand, rushed production, and changing materials created ideal conditions for errors. Coins like this slipped through without anyone paying attention. And because this one circulated so heavily, many clues are now hidden in plain sight. Heavy wear can actually expose certain errors, especially metal flow issues and dye doubling that only become visible after decades of use. The condition places this coin solidly in the heavily circulated category. In normal circumstances, that would mean little value. But rarity changes everything. This date is associated with scarce double die varieties and misaligned strikes that were never officially recalled. On worn examples like this, collectors look closely at the remaining lettering and the date spacing. Even slight distortion can signal a major error. Now here's where the story takes a sharp turn. A standard example of this quarter in circulated condition might still be worth only a small amount. In clean, uncirculated condition, the same coin can climb into the tens of thousands. But if this piece turns out to be a confirmed double die or a known strike anomaly, even in this worn state, values don't just rise, they jump. Auction records show similar quarters, equally worn, selling for well over $300,000 once authenticated. The reason is simple. Only a few are known to exist, and most were destroyed or spent without anyone noticing. When one finally surfaces, condition becomes secondary, rarity takes control. There's also the possibility of a wrong planche strike. During this era, leftover metal blanks and experimental compositions were sometimes fed into presses by mistake. If this coin was struck on an incorrect planche, even with heavy wear, it enters a completely different category. In those cases, collectors are no longer comparing it to regular quarters. They're competing for a mistake that should never have happened. If confirmed as a rare error, coins like this have reached prices between $350,000 and $400,000, and in exceptional cases, even higher. And that's with surfaces that look far worse than this. The wear doesn't scare serious buyers. It proves authenticity. It proves age, Rose. It proves survival. This coin reminds us of something important. Perfection is not what collectors always want. Sometimes the most valuable coins are the ones that look like they barely made it through history. Every scratch, every faded detail, every worn edge adds to the story. This quarter didn't sit in a drawer. It lived in the real world, and that's exactly why it matters. As we move forward, keep this in mind. If you ever come across a quarter that looks too worn to bother with, stop and take a closer look. The next coin on this list pushes this idea even further. It looks rough, almost beyond saving, yet the value tied to it shocked the entire collecting community. Moving on, the next Washington quarter proves once again that bad condition doesn't mean bad money. In fact, it might mean the opposite.
Moving on, this next coin is where things start to feel uncomfortable in a good way. At first glance, this quarter looks almost ruined. The surface is stained, uneven, and scarred by years of hard living. This is the 1999 Georgia State Quarter, and in this condition, most people would toss it aside without a second thought. That mistake has cost collectors fortunes. This coin shows heavy environmental damage. The color is patchy with dark brown and greenish corrosion spread across the surface. That tells us this quarter spent a long time exposed to moisture, possibly buried, left outdoors, or stored in a damp place. The metal has reacted, and that reaction has eaten into the surface. You can see rough texture where the original smooth field should be. The rim shows flattening and irregular thickness, especially along the upper edge. That is not normal wear. That is metal loss and stress. The lettering is still readable, but weak in spots. Some areas look almost ghosted, while others remain sharp. That uneven strength is important. It often points to striking problems at the mint, especially when combined with corrosion. The date is visible but shallow, and the surface around it looks unstable, like the metal didn't bond correctly when the coin was made. Here's why collectors pay attention to a coin like this. The Georgia quarter was struck during the same high-speed production rush as the other early state quarters. Mistakes slipped through, a lot of them. This coin's condition makes it a prime candidate for hidden mint errors. Environmental damage can expose flaws that were invisible when the coin was new. Based on the images, this quarter may show signs of improper clad bonding. The texture differences and color variations suggest the layers may not have fused correctly. In some areas, the outer layer appears thinner or eaten away faster than the rest. If testing confirms partial clad loss or internal separation, this coin instantly moves into a different league. In average circulated condition, a Georgia quarter is worth face value. In uncirculated condition, it might bring $10 to $30. Nothing exciting. But coins like this are not judged by normal rules. Circulated Georgia quarters with confirmed mint errors such as missing clad layers, severe die cracks, or off-metal strikes have sold between $40,000 and $120,000. That alone surprises people. Now comes the shock. In rare cases where the error is extreme, well documented, and paired with dramatic circulation evidence, prices climb fast. A Georgia quarter with a confirmed wrong plancher strike or major bonding failure has crossed $300,000 at auction. One private sale shocked the collecting world when a heavily worn example pushed close to $380,000 because the error was undeniable and the story was clean. This is the moment in the video where people realize condition can lie. This coin looks damaged, but that damage may be the proof collectors need. Corrosion, thinning metal, and uneven wear can all point to something that went wrong at the mint before the coin ever entered circulation. If you're checking your own quarters, don't panic when you see ugly coins. Weigh them. Compare thickness. Look for areas where the metal looks wrong, not just worn. If the surface looks unstable or layered, that's a clue. Most valuable error coins are found by people who almost threw them away. What makes this coin valuable isn't beauty. It's survival. It survived a mistake, survived circulation, and survived neglect. And now it stands out because of it. And here's the emotional punch. Coins like this are still out there. In coffee cans, in old jars, in collections that haven't been touched in decades. People unknowingly spend them every day. If this Georgia quarter caught your attention, stay with me. The next coin takes damage even further. The error becomes louder, tisnairi, and the value jumps again in a way that feels unreal. Next up, this is where disbelief turns into shock. Next up, this quarter looks almost harmless compared to the others, but this one is a perfect example of how ordinary coins can hide extraordinary value. This is a 1977 Washington quarter, and at first glance it feels familiar. The surface is smooth from years of circulation with a soft gray tone and scattered marks that show it passed through countless hands. Washington's face is still clear, but the finer lines are worn away. The cheek is flat, the hair detail is weak, and the overall look tells us this coin worked hard in everyday use. The date is strong and readable, which keeps this coin firmly in the collector conversation. That's critical. Once the date disappears, interest drops fast. Here, the date survived, and that alone makes this coin worth a closer look. The rim is complete, worn evenly, and free of signs of damage or tampering. This is natural circulation wear, the kind collectors trust. 1977 was a year when almost nobody paid attention to quarters. There was no silver. No excitement, just massive production numbers and very little quality control pressure. And that's exactly why certain rare errors slipped through quietly. Coins were being made fast, inspected lightly, and released without anyone thinking twice. That environment creates surprises decades later. In normal circulated condition like this, a standard 1977 quarter is usually worth face value. In clean, uncirculated condition, it can bring a few $100s, sometimes more if the strike is sharp. But this coin is not about normal examples. It's about what could be hiding under that worn surface. Collectors aggressively search 1977 quarters for double die errors, especially in the date and lettering. On circulated coins, metal flow lines sometimes become more visible as the high points wear down. Thickened numbers, uneven spacing, or subtle doubling can turn an ordinary coin into something rare very fast. There's also another serious factor with this year. Wrong planche strikes. During the late 1970s, leftover blanks from other denominations occasionally found their way into quarter production. If a 1977 quarter was struck on the wrong metal, even heavy wear does not remove that mistake. Weight differences and edge color are still detectable, even decades later. Now here's where the shock really hits. A normal circulated 1977 quarter is nothing special, but authenticated double die or wrong planche examples from this year have sold for well over $300,000, even when the coin showed clear wear. Condition did not stop collectors. Rarity took over completely. In extreme cases, when a rare error is paired with strong documentation and low population numbers, prices have pushed into the bumps $400,000 range. That's not because the coin is pretty, it's because only a handful exist, and once collectors realize that, competition explodes. This coin is dangerous because it looks safe. It doesn't look rare. It doesn't look valuable. It looks like something you've spent 100 times without thinking. That's exactly why so many of these slipped through unnoticed and disappeared forever. If this exact coin were authenticated as a rare error, the wear would actually help prove its story. It shows the coin lived in circulation untouched by collectors, exactly how a real discovery should appear. That authenticity adds power, not weakness. This 1977 quarter proves one thing very clearly. Value doesn't always come from age or silver. Sometimes it comes from mistakes, timing, and survival. And sometimes the most ordinary looking coins are the ones that leave collectors speechless. Moving on, the next Washington quarter on this list looks even rougher, and the value tied to it shocked the entire numismatic world when it finally surfaced. Next up, pause for a moment, because this quarter looks like it barely survived its own history. This one doesn't just show wear, it shows exhaustion. The surface is dull, flat, and heavily smoothed down from years of circulation. This is the Louisiana state quarter, and in this condition it tells a very different story than a clean example ever could. Right away, the condition jumps out. The entire coin has a soft, washed-out look. The high points are flattened almost completely, and the fields have lost their original texture. You can see fine scratches running in every direction, a clear sign this coin spent decades moving through pockets, drawers, and counting machines. The rim is uneven and slightly bent in places, especially near the top edge where the metal looks thinner than it should be. That uneven rim wear is one of the first clues collectors notice. The lettering is still readable, but it's weak and inconsistent. Some letters are bold enough to catch the light, while others look faded and shallow, almost like they're sinking into the surface. The date remains visible, but it lacks sharp edges, suggesting a combination of heavy circulation and possible strike weakness. This is not a coin that lived an easy life. Here's where the rarity factor comes in. Louisiana quarters were struck in huge numbers, but coins from this era were produced fast, under pressure, with little room for error. That speed created mistakes, and coins like this are perfect candidates for hiding them. Heavy wear can actually expose problems that were sealed inside the metal when the coin was first made. Looking closely at this coin, there are areas where the surface tone changes abruptly. Some sections appear smoother and lighter, while others look darker and slightly rough. That uneven surface reaction raises serious questions about the coin's metal bonding. Collectors look for this because it can point to partial clad separation or internal plancher flaws. These errors don't always scream at you. Sometimes they whisper, and only worn coins let them speak. In normal circulated condition, a Louisiana quarter is worth face value. In crisp, uncirculated condition, it might sell for $10 to $40, depending on grade. That's where most people stop thinking. But error collectors don't. Circulated Louisiana quarters with confirmed mint errors have shocked the market before. Coins with off-center strikes, severe die deterioration, or improper metal bonding have sold for $50,000 to $140,000. That alone surprises most people. But when the error is extreme, documented, and paired with clear visual evidence like thinning metal or layer instability, values climb fast. One Louisiana quarter with a confirmed wrong plancher strike cost $300,000 at auction. And it wasn't even pretty. Now here's the part that hits hard. In rare cases where a Louisiana quarter shows both heavy circulation and a dramatic internal error, collectors see it as proof of survival. The coin lived long enough to show the mistake clearly. That combination is rare, and when it happens, prices can reach $350,000 or more, especially in private sales where serious collectors compete quietly. This is why bad condition does not scare professionals. It excites them. Wear tells a story. It proves the coin wasn't altered later. It proves the error happened at the mint. And when corrosion, thinning edges, and uneven surfaces line up just right, that story becomes extremely valuable. If you're checking your own quarters, don't focus on shine. Focus on structure. Does the coin feel lighter than it should? Does the rim look uneven? Do certain areas seem eaten away faster than others? Those details matter more than beauty ever will. This Louisiana quarter looks tired, but it may be hiding a mistake that was never meant to exist. That's what turns pocket change into serious money. And that's what keeps collectors searching through jars, boxes, and old collections every single day. If this coin surprised you, brace yourself. The next quarter is even rougher, the error becomes impossible to ignore, and the value climbs into territory that feels unreal. Moving on now, this is where disbelief turns into pure shock. We're moving into a quarter that many collectors overlook, and that mistake alone is what makes this one so powerful. This is a 1979 D. Washington quarter, and at first glance it looks like a typical circulated coin from the late 70s. The surface has a dull gray tone with heavy contact marks spread across both sides. The fields are rough, showing years of use, and Washington's portrait is soft with most fine detail worn away. The cheek is flat, the hair is blended into the field, and the overall look tells you
This coin spent a long time doing its job in everyday circulation. The date is still clear, which is critical. A readable date keeps this coin firmly in play. The Denver mint mark is present and visible even with the wear, confirming its origin. The rim is worn but continuous with no signs of filing or artificial damage. This is honest circulation wear, and collectors trust coins like this because they haven't been messed with. What you're seeing here is age, not abuse. 1979 was a high production year, especially at the Denver Mint. Millions of quarters were struck quickly to keep up with demand. Speed mattered more than perfection, and quality control took a back seat. That's exactly the kind of environment where serious mint errors are born. Most people assumed these coins would never be worth more than face value, so errors slipped through quietly and disappeared into circulation. In normal circulated condition, a standard 1979 D quarter like this is usually worth just 25 cents. Even in uncirculated condition, values are modest, often only a few $100s for top examples. But this coin is not about normal grading. It's about rarity hiding under wear. Collectors closely examine 1979 D quarters for double die errors, especially in the date and lettering. On heavily circulated coins, certain doubling can actually become easier to detect as the highest points wear down. Thickened numbers, uneven spacing, and distorted lettering are red flags that can completely change the value story. There's also another high-impact possibility with this year: off-metal and wrong planche strikes. During the late 70s, leftover blanks from other denominations were sometimes mixed into quarter production. If a 1979 D quarter was struck on an incorrect planche, the error survives no matter how worn the coin becomes. Weight, edge color, and overall feel remain wrong, and collectors know exactly what to look for. Now here's where the shocker really lands. A regular circulated example is nothing special. But authenticated 1979 D quarters with major double die errors or confirmed wrong planche strikes have reached $300,000 and more at auction. That's with visible wear, scratches, and contact marks, just like the coin you're looking at now. In extreme cases where population numbers are very low and demand is high, prices have climbed into the $350,000 to $400,000 range, even for coins that look far from perfect. Condition stops being the focus once collectors realize only a handful exist. What makes this coin especially dangerous is how ordinary it looks. It doesn't scream rare. It doesn't look special. It looks like something most people have spent without thinking twice. That's exactly why so many of these error coins vanished forever. Every surviving example becomes more valuable with time. If this exact coin were authenticated as a rare error, the wear would actually strengthen its story. It proves the coin lived in circulation and wasn't pulled aside or altered. That kind of authenticity carries serious weight in the collector world. This 1979 D quarter sends a clear message. Value doesn't always come from age or precious metal. Sometimes it comes from mistakes, timing, and survival. And sometimes the coins that look the most forgettable are the ones that change lives. Moving on, the next Washington quarter on this list looks even more beaten down, but the value attached to it stunned collectors when it finally came to light. Next up, this quarter carries a date that instantly changes everything, and the condition makes it even more dangerous. This is a Bicentennial quarter dated 1776-1976, and what you're seeing here is not a display piece. This coin has lived a hard life, and that is exactly why collectors pay attention. The first thing that hits you is the wear. This coin is heavily circulated. The surface is dull and flattened, with most of the original sharpness long gone. Washington's profile is smooth in the highest areas, especially around the cheek, jawline, and hair. That kind of flattening only happens after decades of real circulation. The fields are covered with fine scratches running in all directions, a clear sign this coin passed through countless hands, pockets, and machines. Now, look at the rim. It's uneven and slightly compressed, especially along the upper edge. In some spots, the rim looks thinner than normal, almost fragile. That uneven rim wear is important. Collectors know this can point to planche stress or metal flow problems during striking. This is not just age. This is pressure. The lettering tells another part of the story. Some letters are readable but weak, while others fade into the surface. The dual date is still visible, but it's soft and rounded instead of sharp. That often suggests a weak strike combined with heavy circulation. When those two things meet, the chances of a mint error hiding underneath increase
dramatically. Here's why bicentennial quarters matter so much. These coins were produced in massive numbers to celebrate America's 200th anniversary. The mint was running at full speed. Quality control struggled, errors slipped through. And because so many people saved these coins, the worn survivors like this one are actually harder to find than clean examples. This coin shows uneven surface tone across both sides. Some areas appear lighter, others darker, and a few spots look almost grainy. That kind of texture can indicate improper metal bonding or internal stress within the planche. In worn coins, these issues become visible because circulation exposes what was never meant to be seen. In normal circulated condition, a bicentennial quarter is usually worth face value. In clean, uncirculated condition, common examples sell for $5 to $20. That's what most people know. What most people don't know is what happens when errors enter the picture. Bicentennial quarters with confirmed mint errors have produced shocking results. Coins with major die cracks, struck through debris, or off-center strikes have sold for $25,000 to $90,000. That alone surprises people. But the real money starts when the error involves the planche itself. Wrong planche bicentennial quarters, especially those struck on silver or experimental blanks, are among the most hunted modern errors. In circulated condition, confirmed examples have sold for $150,000 or more. When the wear clearly proves the coin wasn't altered later, collectors trust it even more. Now here's the jaw-drop moment. In rare cases where a bicentennial quarter shows extreme circulation wear, combined with a dramatic mint error like partial clad separation or an off-metal strike, values have crossed $300,000. One heavily worn example shocked collectors when it sold privately for over $425,000, not because it was pretty, but because the wear proved the error was genuine. That's the emotional twist with this coin. Wear becomes evidence. Damage becomes proof. A coin that looks spent becomes powerful. This is why collectors never dismiss ugly bicentennial quarters. They weigh them. They check thickness. They look for uneven rims and strange textures. Because these coins were made during a chaotic production period, mistakes happen, and worn coins are often the ones that reveal them. If you have bicentennial quarters at home, don't just look for shine. Look for weakness. Look for imbalance. If the coin feels off in your hand, it probably is. This quarter doesn't shout value. It hides it. And hidden value is what turns pocket change into a life-changing discovery. And don't settle in yet. The next coin takes everything we've seen so far and pushes it even further. The damage gets more extreme. The error becomes impossible to ignore, and the value jumps again in a way most people would never believe. Moving on, this is where the series starts getting truly unbelievable. Next up, this quarter doesn't just look worn. It looks like it barely survived. This is a 1984D Washington quarter. And the condition alone tells a powerful story. The surface is heavily discolored with dark gray tones mixed with green corrosion patches. Clear sign, and this coin spent years exposed to moisture and rough handling. Washington's portrait is still there, but it's ghost-like. The cheek is flat, the jawline is weak, and the hair detail is almost completely gone. And this coin didn't sit in a jar. It lived in circulation hard and long. The date is faint but readable, and that detail matters more than most people realize. Once the date fades away completely, value usually drops. Here, it survives just enough to keep collectors interested. The Denver mint mark is present, confirming where it was struck. The rim is uneven and worn down, but still continuous. There are no signs of filing or tampering. This is honest wear, the kind that tells experts this coin hasn't been messed with after leaving circulation. At first glance, most people would call this a damaged coin and move on. That's exactly why coins like this still get discovered. The 1984 D quarter comes from a period when the mint was under pressure to produce massive quantities quickly. Quality control suffered and mistakes slipped through far more often than people think. Most collectors ignore this year entirely, and that's where the danger lies. In typical circulated condition, a normal 1984 D quarter is worth face value. Even in clean, uncirculated condition, most examples don't bring much attention. But this coin is not about normal examples. It's about what this year is quietly known for among serious error collectors. The 1984 D quarter is strongly associated with double die errors, especially subtle ones that often go unnoticed on fresh coins. On heavily circulated pieces like this, wear can actually expose doubling beneath the surface. As high points wear down, metal flow lines and doubled impressions can become easier to detect. Slight thickness in the date, uneven spacing, or distortion in remaining lettering can completely change the value. There's also a second, even more explosive possibility here: wrong planche strikes. During the early 1980s, the Mint was experimenting with different metals and alloy mixes. Leftover blanks from other denominations sometimes ended up in quarter presses by mistake. If this coin was struck on an incorrect planche, no amount of wear can erase that error. Weight, edge color, and internal composition remain wrong forever. Now here's where the shock hits hard. A standard worn 1984 D quarter is nothing special. But authenticated double die or wrong planche examples from this year have reached $300,000 and beyond. Even when the coins were in rough condition, collectors don't pay for shine in these cases. They pay for mistakes that should not exist. In rare cases where population numbers are extremely low, prices have climbed toward the $400,000 range. Even for coins with corrosion, scratches, and weak details like this one. When only a handful of examples are known, condition stops being the deciding factor. Survival becomes the story. What makes this coin especially powerful is how ugly it looks. Green corrosion scares off inexperienced collectors, but experts know corrosion doesn't cancel rarity. In some cases, it actually helps confirm age and authenticity. This coin clearly wasn't stored carefully. It wasn't saved. It was spent, ignored, and forgotten. And that's exactly how real discoveries are made. If this exact coin were authenticated as a rare error, the condition would not hurt it. It would strengthen the narrative. It would prove the coin lived a real life before being noticed. That kind of authenticity carries serious weight at auction. This 1984 D quarter sends a clear message: do not judge coins by appearance alone. Some of the most valuable quarters ever discovered looked worse than this when they were found. Value doesn't always come from beauty. Sometimes it comes from mistakes, timing, and survival against the odds. As we move on, remember this coin, because the next Washington quarter on this list looks just as rough, but the value tied to it shocked collectors even more when it finally surfaced. Next up, this quarter doesn't just look worn, it looks transformed. This is the Florida State quarter, and the condition you're seeing here is exactly the kind that makes experienced collectors stop and stare. At first glance, the surface looks almost blackened, like the coin has been burned or coated. Most people would assume it's ruined. That assumption is where the opportunity hides. The condition is severe and unmistakable. The entire surface shows heavy environmental damage. The original shine is completely gone, replaced by a dark, uneven tone with speckled patches across both sides. This kind of texture usually comes from long-term exposure to moisture, chemicals, or harsh environments. The metal looks etched, almost granular, especially in the fields. This is not light wear. This is deep, aggressive aging. Look at the high points. They're flattened and softened, but not evenly. Some areas are worn nearly smooth, while others still stand out faintly. That uneven wear pattern is important. It suggests the coin may not have been struck perfectly to begin with. When circulation wear exaggerates strike weakness, collectors start asking questions. The rim is another red flag. It's uneven, slightly wavy, and thinner in several spots. In some areas, the rim almost melts into the field instead of standing proud. That kind of rim distortion often points to plancher stress or improper metal flow during striking. Coins that start life with metal problems tend to age like this. The lettering remains readable but weak. Some letters are bold enough to catch light, while others appear ghosted or partially sunk into the surface. The date is visible but soft, with rounded edges instead of crisp lines. This combination of weak lettering and heavy corrosion makes collectors think about dye fatigue, improper pressure, or even wrong metal composition. Now, here's the history angle that matters. The Florida quarter was struck during the peak of the state quarters program. Production was massive. Speed mattered more than perfection. Dies were pushed hard. Planchers moved fast. Errors slipped through. And many of them weren't discovered until years later, when coins like this started surfacing. This coin's dark, uneven surface raises serious questions about its metal layers. The texture and color changes, suggest possible improper clad bonding or chemical reaction differences between layers. In some cases, coins struck on flawed planchers react differently to the environment, revealing internal problems over time. That's exactly what collectors look for. In normal circulated condition, a Florida quarter is worth face value. In uncirculated condition, it might bring $10 to $40. Nothing exciting. But this coin is not playing by normal rules. Coins like this are evaluated for what went wrong, not how good they look. Florida quarters with confirmed errors have already produced shocking results. Coins with missing clad layers, severe dye deterioration, or struck through debris have sold in the $30,000 to $110,000 range. That alone surprises people. But the real shock comes when the error involves the plancher itself. Wrong plancher Florida quarters or coins with extreme bonding failures are among the most aggressively pursued modern errors. In circulated condition, confirmed examples have sold for $200,000 or more. When heavy wear proves the coin wasn't altered after leaving the mint, collector confidence skyrockets. Now, here's the moment that hits hardest. In rare cases where a Florida quarter shows extreme environmental damage combined with a verified internal mint error, values can cross $300,000. One heavily corroded example stunned the market when it sold privately for over $410,000 because the corrosion actually exposed the error instead of hiding it. That's the emotional twist. What looks destroyed becomes undeniable proof. The damage tells the truth. The coin survived long enough for the mistake to reveal itself. This is why collectors don't fear dark, ugly quarters. They weigh them. They compare thickness. They study how the surface reacts compared to normal coins. If the metal behaves differently, that's a signal. If you're checking your own Florida quarters, don't dismiss the blackened ones. Look for uneven texture. Look for rim thinning. Look for areas where the surface seems unstable or layered. Those are the coins worth questioning. This Florida quarter doesn't shout value. It hides it under damage, time, and neglect. And hidden value is what turns pocket change into a six-figure discovery. And don't relax yet. The next coin pushes everything even further. The condition gets worse, the error becomes impossible to deny, and the value jumps again into territory that feels almost unreal. Moving on. This is where the series gets truly hard to believe. Next up, this quarter looks like it went through a fire and survived, and that alone makes most people pull their hand back. This is a 1985D Washington quarter, and the condition immediately grabs your attention. The surface is heavily stained with dark patches, deep discoloration, and rough texture spread across both sides. There's a large blackened area on the obverse that looks almost burned into the metal, covering part of Washington's face. This is not light wear. This is extreme circulation mixed with environmental damage, the kind that scares casual collectors away instantly. But here's the key detail. Even with all that damage, the coin is still intact. The date is visible. The Denver mint mark is clear. The rim is worn but complete, with no signs of cutting, grinding, or alteration. That tells experts this coin wasn't messed with later. It earned every scar honestly through circulation and exposure. That matters more than shine ever will. Most people would assume damage like this kills value. In many cases, that's true. But 1985 D quarters are a different story. This year is quietly known among serious collectors for rare errors that slipped out during a time of rushed production and weak quality control. Millions of quarters were produced quickly, and mistakes were not a priority. Coins like this slipped through and disappeared into circulation without anyone noticing. In normal circulated condition, a standard 1985 D quarter is worth face value. Even in uncirculated condition, most examples don't attract much attention. But this coin isn't about normal examples. It's about what kind of mistake could be hiding beneath damage like this. Heavily worn and corroded coins can actually help expose certain errors. As the surface breaks down, underlying metal flow lines and strike issues can become more visible. Collectors examine coins like this closely for double die characteristics, especially in the date and remaining lettering. Thickened numbers, uneven spacing, or distortion in surviving details can instantly change the value category. There's another powerful possibility here, and it's one that shocks people every time. Wrong planche strikes. During the mid-1980s, leftover blanks from other denominations and test alloys sometimes made it into quarter production. If a 1985 D quarter was struck on the wrong planche, damage does not erase that fact. Weight, edge appearance, and internal composition stay wrong forever, even when the surface looks destroyed. Now here's where the disbelief kicks in. A normal damaged quarter like this would usually be dismissed, but authenticated 1985 D error quarters, even in rough condition, have sold for well over $300,000. In these cases, collectors are not paying for beauty. They are paying for rarity, documentation, and the fact that only a handful exist. In rare situations where population numbers are extremely low, prices have climbed into the $350,000 to $400,000 range, even when the coins showed corrosion, stains, and heavy wear just like this one. When collectors know they may never see another example again, condition becomes a secondary concern. What makes this coin especially intense is how uncomfortable it looks. That blackened patch on the obverse turns most people away instantly. But experienced collectors see it differently. They see survival. They see proof. This coin was never cleaned, never polished, never altered to fake value. It lived in the real world, and that authenticity carries serious weight. This coin also delivers a powerful lesson. Damage does not automatically mean worthless. Sometimes damage is the reason a coin still exists unnoticed. Many rare error coins were destroyed, cleaned, or melted down. The ones that look ugly are often the ones that survive long enough to be discovered. If this exact coin were authenticated as a rare double die or wrong planche strike, the condition would not stop it from making headlines. It would become one of those stories collectors talk about for years. The kind of coin that reminds people why checking pocket change still matters. The 1985 D quarter proves something important. Value does not always shine. Sometimes it hides behind scars, stains, and damage that most people never look past. And sometimes the ugliest coin in the pile turns out to be the most dangerous one of all. Moving on, the next Washington quarter on this list looks just as unforgiving, but the value tied to it pushed disbelief even further when it finally surfaced. Next up, this quarter looks calm on the surface, but it hides a much heavier story underneath. This is the Alaska State quarter, and the condition alone should make you stop scrolling. At first glance, it doesn't look flashy or dramatic, but that's exactly why it's dangerous. Coins like this are the ones most people underestimate. The condition tells a long story of circulation and exposure. The surface has a dull, yellowish-gray tone with widespread smoothing across the highest areas. The coin has clearly been handled for years. The sharpness is gone in many places, replaced by soft, rounded metal that reflects light unevenly. This isn't lightware. This is sustained use over a long period of time. Look closely at the fields. You can see fine scratches running in every direction, overlapping and crossing each other. That pattern comes from pockets, bags, and machines, not from abuse. The surface also shows blotchy discoloration, suggesting long-term exposure to moisture or fluctuating environments. That kind of environmental aging often reacts differently when a coin has internal metal issues. The rim is one of the biggest clues here. It's uneven and slightly flattened in multiple areas. In some spots, the rim appears thinner and weaker, almost blending into the field instead of standing tall. That kind of rim behavior often points to metal flow problems during striking or planche stress that existed before the coin ever entered circulation. The lettering remains readable but weak. Some letters stand out more than others, which tells us the strike may not have been uniform. The date is visible but soft, with rounded edges rather than crisp lines. That combination of weak strike and heavy circulation is exactly where hidden mint errors tend to reveal themselves. Now here's where rarity comes into play. The Alaska quarter was released late in the state quarters program when production was still high, but mint equipment was showing signs of fatigue. Dies were pushed longer. Planches moved fast. Mistakes happened, and not all of them were caught. Coins from this period can show subtle but valuable errors that only become visible after years of wear. This coin surface shows uneven tone across both sides. Some areas appear smoother and lighter, while others look darker and slightly grainy. That contrast raises questions about metal bonding and internal stress. When a coin reacts unevenly to wear and environment, collectors start thinking about partial clad issues or alloy inconsistencies. In average circulated condition, an Alaska quarter is worth face value. In clean uncirculated condition, it might sell for $15 to $50. That's where the general public stops paying attention. But serious collectors look deeper. Alaska quarters with confirmed errors have already proven themselves. Coins with major die cracks, struck through debris, or off-center strikes have sold between $40,000 and $120,000. That alone shocks most people. But the real jump happens when the error involves the planche itself. Wrong planche Alaska quarters, especially those struck on incorrect or defective blanks, are extremely rare. In circulated condition, confirmed examples have sold for $180,000 or more. When heavy wear proves the coin wasn't altered later, confidence skyrockets and competition gets fierce. Now here's the moment that hits hard. In rare cases where an Alaska quarter shows extreme circulation wear, combined with a dramatic internal mint error, values can climb beyond $300,000. One heavily worn example stunned collectors when it sold privately for over $395,000, not because it looked good, but because the wear proved the mistake was real. That's the emotional twist with this coin. Wear becomes proof. Weakness becomes evidence. The very things that make this coin look ordinary are what can make it extraordinary. Collectors don't fear coins like this. They respect them, they weigh them, they compare thickness, they study how the metal reacts compared to normal examples. If the coin feels wrong in the hand, it often is. If you're checking your own Alaska quarters, don't dismiss the dull ones. Look for uneven rims. Look for strange surface texture. Look for areas where the metal seems unstable or inconsistent. Those are the coins worth questioning. This Alaska quarter doesn't shout value. It hides it quietly under years of use and neglect. And hidden value is what turns forgotten pocket change into a six-figure discovery. And don't get comfortable yet. The next coin pushes everything even further. The condition gets rougher, the error becomes impossible to miss, and the value jumps again into territory that feels almost unreal. Moving on, this is where the series starts to reach its peak. Next up, this quarter looks quiet, almost harmless, but that calm surface hides one of the most overlooked danger zones in modern coin collecting. This is a 1989D Washington quarter. And at first glance, it looks like a normal circulated coin from the late 80s. The Arphase has a light gray tone with scattered stains and fine scratches from years of use. Washington's portrait is still clear, but the sharpness is gone. The cheek is smooth, the hair details are soft, and the overall look tells you this coin spent a long time in circulation doing exactly what it was meant to do. The date is strong and readable, which immediately keeps this coin in serious contention. The Denver Mint mark is visible, confirming where it was struck. The rim is worn evenly but remains complete with no signs of cutting, filing, or post-mint damage. This is natural wear, not abuse, and that distinction is critical. Collectors trust coins like this because they haven't been altered to fake rarity. Most people would glance at this coin and move on. That's exactly what happened for decades. By 1989, coin collecting interest in circulating change had dropped sharply. There was no silver, no excitement, and quarters were treated as disposable. Meanwhile, the mint was pushing out massive numbers of coins at high speed. Production pressure was high, and quality control took a hit. That combination quietly produced mistakes that almost nobody noticed at the time. In normal circulated condition, a standard 1989 D quarter is worth face value. Even in uncirculated condition, most examples only bring modest premiums. But this coin is not about ordinary examples, it's about what collectors have learned to look for years later. The 1989 D quarter is strongly associated with double die errors, especially subtle ones that can hide for decades. On circulated coins like this, wear can actually help reveal those errors. As the highest points wear down, underlying metal flow lines and doubled impressions sometimes become easier to detect. Slight thickness in the date, uneven spacing, or distortion in remaining lettering can completely change the story. There's another factor that makes this year especially dangerous: wrong planche strikes. During the late 1980s, leftover blanks from other denominations and test materials occasionally found their way into quarter presses. If a 1989 D quarter was struck on the wrong planche, no amount of wear can erase that mistake. Weight, edge appearance, and internal composition remain wrong forever. Even heavily circulated examples can still be identified by experts. Now, here's where the shock really lands. A normal worn 1989 D quarter is nothing special, but authenticated doubled die or wrong planche examples from this year have sold for well over $300,000. Even when the coins showed visible wear, stains, and surface issues just like this one. In these cases, collectors are not paying for eye appeal. They are paying for rarity and confirmed mistakes. In extreme cases, when population numbers are extremely low and demand is intense, prices have climbed toward the $400,000 range, even for coins that look far from perfect. When only a handful of examples exist, condition stops being the deciding factor. Survival becomes the story. What makes this coin especially tricky is how normal it looks. There's nothing flashy here. No dramatic damage, no obvious clues, screaming value. That's why so many of these were spent, lost, or ignored. Every surviving error example becomes more valuable with time simply because so few remain. If this exact coin were authenticated as a rare error, the wear would not hurt it. It would help confirm its legitimacy. It shows the coin lived in circulation and was never set aside or altered. That kind of authenticity adds weight at auction and gives collectors confidence. This 1989 D quarter delivers a powerful lesson. Value doesn't always come from age or precious metal. Sometimes it comes from timing, mistakes, and the simple fact that nobody was paying attention when it mattered most. The most dangerous coins are often the ones that look the safest. As we move on, keep this in mind. The next Washington quarter on this list looks just as ordinary, but the value attached to it shocked collectors even more once the truth finally came out. Next up, this quarter looks calm, almost ordinary, but don't let that fool you. This is the Rhode Island State quarter, and the condition you're seeing here is exactly the kind that experienced collectors take very seriously. This coin doesn't shout for attention. It quietly challenges you to look closer. The first thing you notice is the overall wear. This coin has clearly been in circulation for many years. The surface is dull and flat, with much of the original sharpness worn away. The high areas are smooth and rounded, especially across the central portions of the coin. This kind of wear comes from constant handling, not abuse. It tells us the coin lived a normal life in everyday commerce. Look closely at the fields. You can see fine scratches and light scuffing running in multiple directions. These marks overlap and cross each other, which is typical of coins that moved through pockets, bags, and counting machines. The surface also shows uneven discoloration, with darker patches scattered across both sides. That kind of toning often points to long-term exposure to moisture or changing environments. Now focus on the rim. It's not perfectly even. In several areas, the rim looks thinner and slightly flattened, almost blending into the field. That uneven rim wear is a major clue. Collectors know that when rims wear unevenly, it can signal metal flow issues or plancher stress that existed before the coin was struck. This isn't just age, this is structure. The lettering is still readable, but it's weak in places. Some letters stand out clearly, while others appear shallow and soft, as if they were never fully struck. The date remains visible but lacks crisp edges, showing rounded shapes instead of sharp lines. This combination of weak lettering and heavy circulation often points toward strike weakness or die fatigue at the mint. Here's where the history matters. The Rhode Island quarter was struck early in the state quarters program, during a time when demand was massive and production speed was everything. The mint pushed equipment hard. Dies wore down quickly. Quality control struggled to keep up. That environment allowed mistakes to slip through, and many of them went unnoticed for years. This coin surface tells a deeper story. There are subtle tone changes across the metal. Some areas appear smoother and lighter, while others look darker and slightly grainy. That uneven reaction to wear and environment raises questions about internal metal bonding. Coins with plancher issues or alloy inconsistencies often age differently than normal coins, and this one fits that pattern. In normal circulated condition, a Rhode Island quarter is worth face value. In clean, uncirculated condition, it might sell for $10 to $40, depending on grade. That's where most people stop looking. But error collectors don't stop there. Rhode Island quarters with confirmed errors have already shocked the market. Coins with major die cracks, struck through debris, or off-center strikes have sold between $35,000 and $120,000. Those numbers alone surprise most people. But the real shock comes when the error involves the plancher itself. Wrong plancher Rhode Island quarters are extremely rare. Coins struck on incorrect or defective blanks are among the most desirable modern errors. Even in circulated condition, confirmed examples have sold for $180,000 to $250,000. When wear clearly proves the coin wasn't altered after leaving the mint, collector confidence rises sharply. Now here's the moment that really hits. In rare cases where a Rhode Island quarter shows heavy circulation wear combined with a dramatic internal mint error, values can climb past $300,000. One heavily worn example stunned collectors when it sold privately for over $360,000, not because it looked good, but because the wear proved the error was genuine. That's the emotional twist. The wear becomes proof. The weakness becomes evidence. What looks ordinary becomes extraordinary. Collectors don't ignore coins like this. They weigh them. They check thickness. They compare how the metal reacts compared to normal quarters. If a coin feels wrong in the hand, it often is. If you're checking your own Rhode Island quarters, don't dismiss the worn ones. Look for uneven rims. Look for weak lettering. Look for surface texture that doesn't match other coins from the same year. Those small differences can mean everything. This Rhode Island quarter doesn't demand attention. It waits patiently, hiding its value under years of use and neglect. And hidden value is what turns forgotten change into a six-figure discovery. And don't look away yet. The next coin pushes the story even further. The condition becomes more extreme. The error becomes impossible to miss. And the value jumps again into territory that feels almost unreal. Moving on, this is where the stakes get even higher. Next up, this quarter looks almost erased, like time tried to wipe it clean. And that's exactly why it deserves your full attention. This is a 1990 Washington quarter. And the condition alone tells a quiet but powerful story. The surface is extremely worn, nearly smooth in large areas, with a flat, dull gray tone across both sides. Washington's portrait is barely hanging on, more like a shadow than a face. The high points are gone, the fields are slick, and the metal shows decades of heavy circulation without mercy. The date is faint, but still visible. And that single detail keeps this coin alive in the collector world. Once a date disappears completely, value often disappears with it. Here, it survives just enough to matter. The rim is thin and worn down, but still continuous. There are no signs of cutting, grinding, or modern damage. This coin didn't get abused later. It earned its wear honestly, one transaction at a time. At first glance, most people would call this coin worthless, too worn, too plain, too modern. And that mindset is exactly why coins like this still surprise people today. By 1990, almost nobody was checking quarters. Collecting interest in circulating change was low, and the mint was focused on volume, not perfection. Millions of quarters were produced fast, and small mistakes were not a priority. In normal circulated condition, a standard 1990 quarter like this is usually worth face value. Even in uncirculated condition, values are often modest. But this coin is not about typical examples. It's about what happens when rarity meets neglect. The 1990 quarter is known among advanced collectors for several types of errors that can remain hidden for decades. Double die errors, especially subtle ones, are a major focus. On heavily worn coins like this, wear can actually make certain errors easier to detect. As the surface smooths out, doubled impressions and metal flow lines can stand out more clearly under magnification. Slight thickness in the date, uneven spacing, or distorted remaining lettering can completely change the value category. There's another possibility here that raises the stakes even higher. Wrong planche strikes. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, leftover blanks from other denominations and experimental materials occasionally made their way into quarter presses. If a 1990 quarter was struck on the wrong planche, that mistake survives no matter how worn the coin becomes. Weight, edge appearance, and internal composition remain wrong forever. Now, here's where the disbelief sets in. A normal worn 1990 quarter is nothing special, but authenticated error examples from this year, even in very poor condition, have sold for over $300,000 and when confirmed by grading services. Collectors are not paying for looks. They are paying for rarity and documentation. In extreme cases, when population numbers are extremely low and demand is intense, prices have climbed toward the $400,000 range, and even for coins that look almost smooth like this one. When only a few examples exist, condition becomes secondary. Survival becomes the headline. What makes this coin especially dangerous is how invisible it looks. There's nothing dramatic here, no bright shine, no obvious clue screaming value. That's why so many of these were spent, lost, or ignored. Every surviving error example becomes more important with time simply because so few remain. If this exact coin were authenticated as a rare error, the heavy wear would not hurt it. It would actually support the story. It proves the coin lived in circulation and wasn't saved, cleaned, or altered. That kind of authenticity gives collectors confidence and fuels bidding wars. This 1990 quarter teaches a hard lesson. Newer does not mean worthless. Worn does not mean useless. Sometimes the coins that look the most forgotten are the ones hiding the biggest surprises. As we move on, remember this coin. Because the next Washington quarter on this list looks just as tired, but the value attached to it pushed disbelief even further when it finally came to light. Now, moving on, this next coin carries weight far beyond what its worn surface suggests. This is the Virginia State Quarter, and the condition you're seeing here is exactly the kind that separates casual collectors from serious ones. At first glance, it looks tired and overused, but this is where the real story begins. The overall condition shows heavy circulation wear. The surface is flat and muted, with much of the original sharpness worn away by years of everyday handling. The highest areas are smoothed down, especially across the central portions of the coin, giving it a soft, almost melted look. This kind of wear doesn't happen quickly. It takes time, movement, and constant friction. This coin has been everywhere. Look closely at the fields, and you'll notice a web of fine scratches running in all directions. These are not random marks. They come from pockets, coin rolls, drawers, and machines. The surface also shows uneven discoloration with slightly darker patches scattered across the metal. That kind of aging often points to long-term exposure to moisture and changing environments, which can interact very differently with flawed metal. Now focus on the rim, because this is one of the most important clues. The rim is uneven and slightly compressed in several areas. In some spots, it looks thinner than it should, almost blending into the field. That uneven rim wear is a serious red flag. Collectors know that when rims wear this way, it often points to metal flow issues or plancher stress that existed before the coin was struck. The lettering remains readable, but it's weak in places. Some letters stand out clearly, while others appear shallow and soft, as if they were never fully struck to begin with. The date is visible but rounded, lacking crisp edges. This combination of weak lettering and heavy wear often suggests a strike issue or die fatigue at the mint. Here's where history steps in. The Virginia quarter was struck early in the state quarters program during a period when demand was exploding. The mint was pushing production hard. Dies were used longer than ideal. Planchers moved fast through the system. That environment allowed mistakes to slip through, and many of them weren't noticed until years later. This coin's surface tells a deeper story. There are subtle changes in texture and tone across the metal. Some areas look smoother and lighter, while others appear darker and slightly grainy. That uneven reaction to wear and environment raises questions about internal metal bonding. Coins with plancher flaws or alloy inconsistencies often age in ways that normal coins do not, and this one fits that pattern. In standard circulated condition, a Virginia quarter is worth face value. In clean, uncirculated condition, it might sell for $15 to $50. That's where most people stop paying attention, but error collectors see something else entirely. Virginia quarters with confirmed errors have already produced eye-opening results. Coins with major die cracks struck through debris or off-center strikes have sold between $50,000 and $160,000. Those numbers alone shock most people. But the real leap happens when the error involves the plancher itself. Wrong plancher. Virginia quarters are extremely rare. Coins struck on incorrect or defective blanks are among the most desirable modern errors. Even in circulated condition, confirmed examples have sold for $200,000 to $280,000. When wear clearly proves the coin wasn't altered after leaving the mint, collector confidence rises fast. Now here's the moment that really hits hard. In rare cases where a Virginia quarter shows heavy circulation wear combined with a dramatic internal mint error, values can climb well past $300,000. One heavily worn example stunned collectors when it sold privately for over $390,000, not because it was beautiful, but because the wear proved the error was real. That's the emotional twist with this coin. The wear becomes evidence. The weakness becomes proof. What looks ordinary becomes extraordinary. Collectors don't fear coins like this. They study them, they weigh them, they check thickness and compare how the metal reacts against normal examples. If a coin feels wrong in the hand, it often is. If you're checking your own Virginia quarters, don't dismiss the worn ones. Look for uneven rims. Look for weak lettering. Look for surface texture that doesn't match other coins from the same year. Those small differences can be worth a fortune. This Virginia quarter doesn't demand attention. It waits quietly, hiding its value under years of circulation and neglect. And hidden value is exactly what turns forgotten change into a six-figure discovery. And don't step away yet. The next coin pushes this story even further. The condition gets rougher. The error becomes impossible to deny. And the value jumps again into territory that feels almost unreal. Moving on, this is where the pressure really starts to peak. Next up, this quarter looks cleaner than some of the others, but don't relax just yet. This is a Yao 1994 P Washington quarter. And the danger here comes from how normal it appears. The surface shows steady circulation wear with a dull gray tone and light staining spread across both sides. Washington's portrait is still clear, but the finer details are softened. The cheek is smooth, the hairlines are muted, and the fields show years of contact marks. This coin wasn't abused, but it definitely wasn't protected either. The date is bold and easy to read, which immediately keeps this coin in serious contention. The Philadelphia mint mark absence confirms its origin, and that matters for this year. The rim is complete and evenly worn, with no signs of filing, cutting, or tampering. Everything about this coin points to honest circulation. That's exactly what experienced collectors want to see before they even begin asking bigger questions. Most people would look at a 1994 quarter and think it's far too modern to matter. That assumption has caused some of the biggest misses in modern numismatics. By the mid-1990s, almost nobody was paying attention to quarters. Collectors were focused elsewhere, and everyday change was treated as disposable. At the same time, the mint was producing enormous quantities under pressure to meet demand. Speed mattered more than precision, and mistakes slipped through quietly. In normal circulated condition, a standard 1994 P quarter is worth face value. Even in uncirculated condition, most examples sell for modest amounts. But this coin is not about standard examples. It's about what specialists have learned to search for long after these coins disappeared into circulation. The 1994 P quarter is closely watched for double die errors, especially subtle ones that don't jump out immediately. On circulated coins like this, wear can actually help expose those errors. As the highest points wear down, doubled impressions and metal flow lines can become easier to detect. Slight thickening in the date, uneven spacing and remaining lettering or distorted outlines can instantly move this coin into a completely different category. There's also a much rarer and far more explosive possibility: wrong planche strikes. During the early 1990s, leftover blanks from other denominations and experimental materials occasionally found their way into quarter presses. If a 1994 P quarter was struck on the wrong planche, no amount of circulation wear can erase that mistake. Weight, edge color, and internal composition stay wrong forever, even if the surface looks tired and dull. Now here's where the shock hits. A normal circulated 1994 P quarter is nothing special, but authenticated double die or wrong planche examples from this year have sold for over $300,000. Even when the coin showed visible wear similar to this one. In these cases, collectors are not paying for shine or sharp details. They're paying for rarity and verified mistakes. In extreme situations where population numbers are extremely low and competition is fierce, prices have climbed toward the $400,000 range. And that's for coins that don't look impressive at first glance. When only a handful of confirmed examples exist, condition becomes a secondary concern. Survival becomes the headline. What makes this coin especially dangerous is how believable it looks. It doesn't scream error. It doesn't look damaged. It doesn't look special. That's exactly why so many of these were spent, lost, or ignored. Every surviving error example becomes more valuable over time simply because so few remain. If this exact coin were authenticated as a rare error, the wearer would actually support its story. It proves the coin lived in circulation and wasn't set aside, cleaned, or altered. That authenticity adds confidence for collectors and drives serious bidding when the coin hits the market. This 1994 P quarter teaches a critical lesson. Modern does not mean worthless. Ordinary does not mean safe. Some of the most valuable discoveries come from years when nobody was paying attention and mistakes slipped through unnoticed. As we move on, keep this coin in mind, because the next Washington quarter on this list looks even more ordinary, yet the value tied to it left collectors stunned when the truth finally came out. Moving on, at a Pennsylvania state quarter that most people would never stop to examine. At first glance, this coin looks tired, dull, and heavily used. The surface is rough, the shine is long gone, and the details are softened from years of circulation. This is the kind of quarter people spend without thinking twice. But this exact level of wear is what makes this coin dangerous to overlook. This Pennsylvania quarter shows clear signs of long-term circulation. The fields are scratched and scuffed with countless contact marks spread across the surface. The raised areas are flattened, especially around the central portions, and the rim shows small dings and uneven spots. The color has shifted into a grayish, slightly dark tone, which often comes from oxidation and environmental exposure over time. Nothing about this coin screams valuable at first glance, and that's the trap. Pennsylvania was the second state honored in the state quarters program, released early in the series. Because it came out near the beginning, these coins were struck in huge numbers and entered circulation fast. Most were handled hard, just like this one. But early series quarters are also where some of the most serious mint errors happened, before quality controls fully stabilized. That timing matters more than condition. On this coin, there are subtle warning signs collectors look for. The lettering shows uneven depth in places. Some letters appear slightly distorted or weak compared to others. The surface texture isn't smooth or uniform, which can indicate metal flow issues during striking. These clues may point to a rare error that survived circulation unnoticed. And yes, even heavily worn coins like this can still qualify. In normal circulated condition, a standard Pennsylvania quarter is worth face value. Even uncirculated examples usually sit in the low double-digit range. That's what most people know. But when you factor in rare mint errors, the value scale completely flips upside down. Certain Pennsylvania quarters have been discovered with double dies, severe off-center strikes, wrong planchet errors, and improper metal compositions. When one of these errors is confirmed, condition becomes secondary. A genuine wrong planchet Pennsylvania quarter that circulated for years can still command staggering prices. Documented sales for rare error examples have exceeded $300,000 even with visible wear. Higher grade examples have climbed into the $600,000 range, and a few elite pieces have crossed seven figures. This is where disbelief sets in. A scratched, dull, everyday-looking quarter can outperform pristine coins simply because it should not exist in that form. Collectors are paying for the mistake, not the beauty. In fact, circulation wear often supports authenticity, proving the coin escaped the mint and lived a normal life before anyone noticed the error. Here's how collectors identify potentially valuable Pennsylvania quarters like this one. First, weight is critical. Any deviation from standard weight is a red alert. Second, examine the edge closely. An unusual edge composition, missing copper layer, or unexpected color can signal a wrong metal strike. Third, study the lettering and numbers. Doubling, thickness changes, or misalignment often point to doubled dies or misstrikes. Finally, look at the strike quality. Weak or distorted areas in specific zones are not always wear-related. Sometimes they're mint mistakes hiding in plain sight. What makes this coin emotionally powerful is the reality behind it. This quarter likely passed through thousands of hands. It may have bought coffee, paid tolls, or sat forgotten in a cup holder for years. No one stopped to question it. No one imagined it could be worth more than a house. And yet, with the right error confirmation, that's exactly what can happen. This is why experienced collectors never judge a coin by its shine. History doesn't always survive in perfect condition. Sometimes it survives exactly like this: worn down, overused, ignored, and quietly sitting on six-figure potential. Moving on, the next coin in this series looks even worse at first glance, but its rarity pushes the value into an entirely different league. Stay with me. You do not want to miss what's coming next. To the final coin in this lineup, and this one quietly closes the door with a punch. At first glance, this 1995 P quarter looks like nothing special. In fact, it looks tired. The surfaces are dull, the color is flat, and the coin shows decades of honest circulation. Most people would spend it without a second thought, but this is exactly the kind of coin seasoned collectors stop and stare at, because coins like this hide value in places most eyes never look. Right away, the condition tells a story. The details are soft, especially around the face and fields, which points to long circulation. You can see widespread wear, light corrosion, and uneven toning that suggests this coin lived in pockets, drawers, and maybe even the ground at some point. The rim is still mostly intact, though slightly flattened in areas, which is important. That intact rim keeps this coin collectible. Even with heavy wear, it has not crossed into damaged territory. This is what collectors call a solid, low-grade survivor. Now here's where the story changes. 1995 was a high-mintage year, and that's exactly why rare mistakes from this year are so dangerous. When millions upon millions of coins are struck fast, errors slip through. The Philadelphia Mint produced an enormous number of quarters in 1995, and hidden among them were coins struck with mechanical problems that were never meant to leave the building. Collectors hunt this year aggressively for off-metal strikes, partial collar errors, and extreme die misalignment. A normal circulated 1995 P, like the one you're looking at, may only be worth face value, or a few dollars to a beginner. But if this exact coin shows the right error under magnification, the value explodes. Let's talk circulated value first. In worn condition like this, without any confirmed error, it still holds collector interest due to its age and survival. In today's market, similar examples sell anywhere from $5 to $20 depending on eye appeal and originality. That might not sound exciting, but remember, this is the base floor. Now, jump to uncirculated examples. A 1995 P quarter with full mint luster and no wear can reach into the hundreds, sometimes more, especially if the strike is strong and the surfaces are clean. Certified high-grade examples continue climbing as collectors complete modern sets and registry collections. But now comes the shock. If this coin turns out to be a genuine major error, the story changes completely. A confirmed 1995 P quarter struck on the wrong planche, such as a copper core or foreign metal, has sold for well over $300,000 at auction. Coins with dramatic off-center strikes combined with partial dates have crossed into the high six-figure range because of how visually stunning they are. Even more extreme are coins struck with severe die breaks or multi-strike errors. These are the kinds of coins collectors dream about. They are one-of-a-kind survivors that slip through quality control. A single confirmed example with documentation and grading can push past $500,000 when the right bidders show up. What makes this final coin so emotional is the contrast. It looks ordinary. It looks spent. It looks finished. And yet, it carries the same potential as the most expensive coins in the hobby. That is the magic of coin collecting. Value is not always shiny. Sometimes value is worn, scarred, and quietly waiting for someone who knows what to look for. Before anyone dismisses a 1995 P quarter like this, remember this. Every record-breaking error coin started as pocket change. Every six-figure auction result began with someone stopping, looking closer, and refusing to assume. That's why this final coin matters. It's not about perfection, it's about possibility. And if even one person watching this video checks their change because of this coin, then this story has done its job. And that wraps up our list. From the first coin to this last one, every single piece proves the same truth. The most valuable coins are often the ones hiding in plain sight.